The West is doing a better job. They're calling it box breathing. They're calling it 5-7-8. Actually, it causes me a lot of pain. It really bugs me.
Whether it's Europe, whether it's other countries, United States, everybody else, they only want to know your original story. But that has not happened in our own country. That has not happened in our own country. You want to get into a top college, all we are interested to know is 99.6 or 99.7.
ग्रैंड-पेरेंट्स कहानियाँ सुनाएं, पेरेंट्स कहानियाँ सुनाएं, स्टोरी टेलिंग कम हो गई है. And storytelling is such a beautiful tool to introduce the values.
Spirituality comes from the values that we have within. It is our upbringing. It is how we are raised. It is what we have within ourselves, what we want to give to the society.
Radha Krishnan said this very beautifully right at the time of independence. In the Indian context, the magic of metaphysics was infused into the society, the multitude of society. That's what he said. For us, religion is not a category. For us, dharma is a category. Because we've lost it, we are trying to find and grope for words around it. And because you don't have dharma as the central focus, you don't have the superset of the beliefs and the convictions that give you validity for your actions.
I'd like you to welcome all of them. The format that I was proposing is that we take 1 or 2 minutes each. Please share your views on whether spirituality in its various dimensions and forms should be in schools, should not be in schools, what is your own personal experience, and then I'll come back in the second round and ask a few direct questions. Is that okay with all of you? Is that the right format? And then if we have time, we'll have 1 or 2 questions from the audience, okay? So I think we can go and start with you, Apurva, is that good? All right.
I think it is actually very important to give children a spiritual grounding as they grow up. And for me, what a spiritual grounding really means is some tools within them, helping them connect with resources within to help them navigate and respond to the world. Not everything is outside. For me, that is, a lot of the earlier panel, people use the word adhyatmik. Yeah, that is essentially what I feel spirituality is all about, is to help connect with that inner space, which is rich, which is stable, and teaching children that there is a place inside which can hold us and give us a foundation that we can stand on. So I do think it's essential, and especially in today's world.
Thank you.
There's so many thoughts running in my head right now. So I don't know which one to pick first, but I'll try. The foremost being, of course, it should be a part of everyday life, everyday academic curriculum. That's a no-brainer. But I think, according to me, somebody who's also practiced yoga and believes in a lot of breath work, is that we all are changing with the time. If we were going to cinemas earlier, now we watch Netflix at home. Similarly, we need to also understand that how to make spirituality, how to press the pause button with these kids in schools has to be accessible. And we have to go beyond the rhetoric of, it lies within us. Happiness lies within you. It's nice to hear it. How do you go about it? Can we get practical tips to do that? Right. And all they need are practical tips. I can tell you, as someone who's dealing with a lot of recent generations, whether it's Z or millennials, I get confused with that one. They are more open to learning than any other generation in my experience. So I think we have lots to offer to them. Thank you.
Very interesting point.
And why only in schools? I think it should start from homes itself. And as both of them talked about some tools can be teaching them very basic virtues and values. And the essential method is modeling. Children learn basically by modeling, by learning from what their parents or teachers are doing. So teaching them basic values that you have to love to nature, you have to respect your elders, you have to listen to your elders. what is compassion, what is gratitude, these basic values, if are imparted from the homes, because parenting is also very much disturbed. Today, we are talking about schools, but child spends most of the time at home also. So it has to be done both ways, from parents as well as from schools. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you for this opportunity. And I just want to say that as a student, I feel that spirituality is important. You know, in today's world, in the 21st century, we are in the middle of the chaos. We are, exposed to new elements every day, and our brains are still developing, and there's a lot of different things that are happening to us. For me, spirituality is about reaching that calm space, that safe space where we can take a breather. And I feel if we start in school, if we start practicing spirituality in school, not only will we grow older, our spiritual self will also grow stronger. That's why I believe that spirituality is something that should be started in school, no matter how small. For example, when I was in class 5, I still remember Uttara ma'am used to have a gong time right after break. She used to ring the Tibetan ringing bowl through the PA system. During that moment, there was no shouting, no chaos, no running, no nothing. There was stillness, and there was that single note that echoed throughout the school. In that moment, I wasn't impressed. I'm going to be honest. I just thought it was a forced moment of silence. But now when I look back on it, I realize that it was the start of something deeper than we could have realized. The start of learning how to be still, to pause, and to be in the moment.
Thank you. I think he rightly said, this question of giving spirituality in schools, everybody is wondering. Later in their life, they will realize that it is of great use. I'm sure about it. Our Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda he has given the vision 60 years before he started the first school in Kerala, Kolangod, and he has given the vision to all the Chinmaya mission devotees. He said, I'm starting schools to make them as good human beings. I don't think human beings can be made without spiritual education. It's impossible to do it. He also used to say that whatever we are, a human being is the only species which has got this power to make right choices in life. Anybody's life can become a beautiful journey if he makes the right choices in life. He chooses. He is only ruling. The chaos he mentioned about is created by the human beings only. There was no chaos. So it is very important, essential. And any student can become the architect. Any child, any growing up person can become an architect of his own life by making right choices. And that right choice, that ability to understand, discriminate between the right and the wrong is the foundation of spiritual education. And I strongly feel, and we do it in a big way, because we very often reminding ourselves that this is what our Gurudev's vision. Let's not go only with marks. Let's not only do this. Let us give as much as values to the students. And that has been our priority in our schools. I think it makes a lot of difference. It is very, very essential.
A very good afternoon. I totally agree. The only purpose of education is liberation. So it's very, very important that children first, instead of being doctors and engineers or YouTubers or anything that they want to be, they need to be human beings. When we have children in the class, initially, when they just come to the school, we do a lot of activities which are pre-writing, which are pre-reading, and these activities are done so that the neurons are connected and synapses are formed. Now, similarly, my one request is that spirituality is a way of living, not a curriculum. Let's not include it as something extra. I'm a teacher. I'm going in the class. I'm just telling you people, please hold on to a candle. Please hold on to a flower. Now, can you all do it? Just blow the candle. Now, smell the flower. It's such a simple thing to start with our children. I started doing it in one of the class, and the next day children saw me, ma'am, please do this. So they connect. And spirituality is very important. When my inner self is fighting with my outer self, how will I survive? It's something to survive. We need this. We definitely need this.
Yeah, I think the way we frame this question, is spirituality needed, itself reveals the kind of cognitive load that we suffer from. Fact that we have to look at this as something that is outside and not something that is intrinsic and a natural expression of the child is a burden that we are imposing. It's not how the child is, right? So this question of whether spirituality is needed in schools, I think a better way of framing that, at least in my opinion, is are schools ready to actually let the child's inner spirituality express itself, right? So we have to look at the environment, we'll have to look at the subject. We've so far, of course, given a lot of importance to the cognitive intelligence, to the analytical intelligence, but there is a deeper intelligence of the self. And the self, when it becomes a chariot, is when the life's journey is going to be smooth. So if the school's purpose is liberation, if the school's purpose is to make sure that the child is fully capable by himself or herself, we also have to look at this from a slightly higher level of culture and civilization as well, because that's also my area of work. We are having to have this conversation and frame it this way because so far freedom has been framed as freedom to. So when you talk about freedom, it is freedom to do something, freedom to speak, freedom to express myself. The way we talk about freedom in our context is freedom from, right? That is why if you look at the Indian language expression of this, you will not have this duality. Samskara is something that is done well. So if you are in education, you're doing the process of rearing the child well. That is samskara abhyasa. So that's the way we look at it. So therefore, there is multiple levels of analysis that we can do. But fundamentally, there is an unlearning that we need to go through, especially in terms of the link between language and cognition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raghav. Apurva, I'll come to you. When we speak to schools, especially school managements, they will happily schedule a sports period or a drama class. But if you say, I want to do pranayama, firstly, the load of that word itself, they feel, no, this is too spiritual. As someone who does breath work for a living, how do you, in a very simple way, convince a school administration who needs to deal with thousands of different things that this is something that they can seamlessly integrate into their schedule and not feel very icky about it?
It's very difficult. I'll be very honest with you. There are probably many teachers and principals sitting here, and I can try very hard to convince them, but it's very difficult and it's really sad.
But how do you make the breakthrough? Because, when you run a breathwork
Yeah.
organization, you probably need to convince people that they need to introduce breathwork in their lives. So how do we
Yeah.
frame this proposition for schools
Yeah.
that, look, this is going to help you achieve your other objectives, and this is a tool to do that? Do you think there's a way to frame this in a nicer way?
A lot of what I have tried to do over the last many years is to actually really simplify what seem to be really complex ideas. Unfortunately, and this was in the talk earlier as well, the West is doing a better job. They're calling it box breathing. They're calling it 5-7-8. Actually, it causes me a lot of pain. It really bugs me. What have we lost out in not understanding these concepts, making them really complex, making them something that ascetics do in the hills? It's really actually extremely simple. The simplest definition of pranayama is just becoming conscious of your breath. That's all. That is pranayama to start with. So what I've tried to do is to really simplify it, bring in the easiest practices, not make it esoteric, and try. Try with the teachers, try with the students, and it works. It works beautifully. I just had a student talk last week that just spending 5 minutes with her breath, she feels like she's a different person. The person who steps out in the world is completely different. Just that. So that's the only way. Can we simplify it? And can we all try it? And when we try it, can we give it some time and space? It only needs about 15 minutes a day for children. For adults, maybe more. But for children, it just needs 15 minutes. And can we say this is actually the most important thing, not your maths, not your English, and I'm sure there are a lot of people here who don't agree with me. My family runs a school in Hyderabad. It's been a task to even convince them because of the curriculums, because of the different boards and affiliations. So can we look at it systemically also and create space for it and say, this is actually the most important thing in the development of the human being. This child is going to grow up and be a human in the world. Can this child learn how to connect with their breath and use the breath to calm their mind in really simple ways? And I really liked what you said, where the taste of it, the memory of it still stays with you. Once a person experiences a calmer state of mind and a calmer state of being, that taste will stay with you. And you will know when that moment is chaos, something will bring you back to it. So far, my only success has been in really simplifying it. I run this series called Befriend Your Breath. I'm like, become friends with your breath. It's really that simple.
It's very simply put. If I can go to you, Nagina ji, you also counsel students. And usually the counseling is about success. So when parents come to you in panic mode, I need to get my child into this particular university or that, it's all about making them achieve something. And probably through your tools and techniques, you teach them how to reach that particular destination. But given the weird statistics in India, for example, 98% of students who go for IIT coaching will actually fail. We have the highest failure rates in the world. What have you learned about how to teach them to handle rejection? Not simply teach them to celebrate success.
Thank you for your question. So I work with students who are aspiring for a higher educational goal, regardless of the geographical location. I don't like to say this, I love my country, but unfortunately the country is not catering to everybody aspiring for a higher educational goal. The beauty of all the other countries offering these kids the kind of courses they want to do in academics is that they first look at their overall profile, which usually is surrounding around their own personal journey. That's the beauty of how things are happening outside. The last thing they are looking at is the academic score. I'm sure you all are aware of a statement of purpose and the essay and how you will not believe it, whether it's Europe, whether it's other countries, United States, everybody else. They only want to know your original story. But that has not happened in our own country. That has not happened in our own country. You want to get into a top college, all we are interested to know is 99.6 or 99.7. There's nothing else matters. That's something we need to definitely change. As a mother of a 18-year-old who's also a Kathak dancer, a boy, and is also an academic topper, I can tell you, the journey, ma'am rightly said, begins also at home.
So very interesting thing that you said that US universities ask for a statement of purpose. They ask for statement of purpose, all of them. So since the morning, this word purpose has come up 15 or 20 times in the discussion, that children need to find their own purpose. But I see that people go to the counselor and say, can you write my statement of purpose for me?
They are going to Canada. They're not good.
They're gaming the system, even for finding your own purpose.
Right. So they are, see, somebody is paying for that child going to the counselor to write a statement of purpose. That is a parent, somebody from this audience. We can't blame the child for them. For the child, that is the norm. Ki likhwa lo, easy ho gaya hai. Which parent is going to say, why don't you sit down and let's work on this together? We will look for a shortcut.
So I think one of the goals of being spiritual is that you need to find your own purpose, then pay somebody to write a statement of purpose for you.
Trust me, now there are algorithms to figure that out also. If somebody else has written it for you or you've written it for yourself, and I'm so happy about that. Talent will shine, sir, regardless.
Yes, of course. Dr. Vibha, I have a question for you. So, if you look at modern psychology, which is what you practice, right? And you probably trained in a modern way of looking at mental health and mental wellness. But everything that we speak about, and you had a lot of scholarly people today in the first half of the session, when we speak about mindfulness, we use words that are very alien to the modern concept of psychology. And now I also know that CBSE has counselors in all schools. It's mandatory to have. Despite that, we have a mental health emergency. So, my question is twofold. Firstly, somewhere by adopting Western models for mental health and wellness, have we missed the bus? Don't those model works with Indian students or the Indian population? Two, how do we also have psychologists and psychiatrists, 100% of whom are trained in the Western models, to start looking at that there is an Indian way to deal with these things themselves?
Yeah, I'm very happy you have asked this. At least I can say about myself, I am one of the person who look into Indian methods. Method like process can be Western, but the inputs you give in your therapies, in your assessments should be Indian, should be from the background from where child is coming from. Even for an Indian child coming from South Delhi and child coming from East Delhi, we have, at least I have different approach. Child coming from Sanskriti school and child coming from some government school in Delhi, there should be a different approach. And how to actually amalgamate the Indian values into it, understanding those things are very, very important. Just, I would like to also say that, of course, training is still, but I suggest to my students, I have done myself, to read the Indian psychology, not only just the books on Indian psychology, what we have done. Like there are books of Swami Vivekanand from Ramakrishna Mission or from some other like Sri Aurobindo, how they have explained the concepts of mind. And the basic Gita is Gita. So everyone, I think, must read Srimad Bhagavad Gita in life. That's the favorite book. And to understand, to interpret in your own way. So when we take especially I can say myself, I talk to children as well as to parents. And as we were finding what is the purpose of the child's life, first parents have to decide. So I ask the parents, what do you want from your child? So mostly the answers are like doctor or engineer. No, your answer is wrong. Your answer should be that I want to see my child happy. He should have a happy life. Whatever problems he is having, just promise, I make them promise to the child that I am with you, whatever you are doing. Don't blame the child for whatever scores he or she is getting. Don't blame the school or anyone else. Just give that trust to your child that you are with the child. And for that, I simply, very simply ask, and you can introduce this question whenever your child or adolescent, boy or girl, throws a tantrum or a parent throws a tantrum to the teachers. Has anyone given you any choice to choose your own parents? Or has anyone showed you some photographs that you choose your child? No. So when you did not have control of choosing your own parents or own children, now you have to live with whatever you have got. You have to live in the house, you have to live in the society. I did not ask God to give birth to me in a particular family. I have been born. I have been born in this society. I have been born in India. I did not have any control on that. So why should I try to control the future of my child? It will happen. Gradually, just explore. Your purpose and your goal should be, as ma'am very rightly said, I also say the same thing, to make your child a good human being. And your success is you are a successful parent and you are a successful teacher if you have made some good human beings in your life. If your child has evolved as a good human being, whatever he will do, he will succeed. That's guaranteed. Whatever he or she will do. So, and for that, like for younger generation, there are some quotes. Often Shah Rukh Khan says, my father used to say, jo kuch nahi karte, kamal karte hain. So those kind of quotes are very favorite for younger generations. So I use some, and from, of course, from Indian. And if you give me just half a minute more. So we as counselors and therapists as well as teachers should first read about the Indian literature. What we have, for example, Panchtantra ki kahaniyan, we used to read in our childhood. So these should be introduced in schools as well as in homes. घर में बच्चों को बजाय reels and mobile phones दिखाने के, why can't we introduce them to those पंचतंत्र कहानियाँ, to like अमर चित्र कथा में जो हमारी रामायण आ रही है, महाभारत है, और सारी चीजें, ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स कहानियां सुनाएं, पेरेंट्स कहानियां सुनाएं. स्टोरी टेलिंग कम हो गई है, एंड स्टोरी टेलिंग इज सच अ ब्यूटिफुल टूल टू इंट्रोड्यूस the values, to introduce storytelling, as Sir was also saying, he is making in some movies. So either through movies, through reels, or telling stories is the beautiful way of introducing spirituality in the earlier years. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And I'm really glad that you use techniques of Bhagavad Gita and all of that. I'm waiting for. You think it will be introduced in your medical curriculum as well when you train to be a doctor? They teach you Bhagavad Gita.
In psychology, we have some Indian psychology papers and we teach some of the things, but I don't think that in medical education per se they are going to include.
But psychiatrists are doctors, right?
Psychiatrists are.
But if they're in
MBBS
the
and
whole
MD
medical
doctors.
school, they didn't learn about Gita. But do you think they're picking it up now because it's a fad that everybody, it's a good thing to talk about?
Yes, they should. They should talk about it.
Thank you for admitting that. Kabir, I'll come to you, but I don't want you to give me a pre-prepared polite answer because I'm not asking you pre-prepared question. So you spoke about all these amazing practices that were happening in your school and how you started looking inward, etc. But whenever I go to any school annual day, they only celebrate the marks. They say we have so many toppers, we got these distinctions, our students got into these colleges, etc. So do you think there is a massive mismatch between the narrative that we want to build a whole child or happiness curriculum, but what you're actually celebrating is only marks and results?
So, sir, the majority of the population does have this problem. I agree, marks are celebrated a lot. I've seen it.
No, they are the only thing that is celebrated.
So, yes, in many schools, I agree. It is the real scenario. My friends are always comparing, Acha, you got 78, I got 79, you got 78, I got 78.5. And that is very, that is a problem. But in today's day and age, the problem is that all of the students, or at least the majority of them, those who are not privileged enough to, look at other options, to look and to research other options, have to go into those competitive fields, be it law, be it engineering, or be it the NEET exams. And I feel like that is why exams or the exam marks are celebrated so much. But I feel like there are, some instances where you see that there is a difference. There are some schools. I mean, you might think this is biased, but I think that my school does have that, difference. It dared to be. It dared to be different. Not in a daredevil or a thrill-seeking way,
Sure.
but in a way that introduced students to something deeper. For spirituality has a lot of meanings. That is what I learned. It means different things for different people, and even one way of connecting with your spiritual self is even donating. Yogdan, and we've done that in our school. We even have a department called Shri Sahyog, where we help the didis and bhaiyas that work in our school. All the students contribute, some grains, something, and they help the didis and bhaiyas. Not only that, our school has taught me something very important. Namaste. That is a quality that I personally have not seen in any other school except Sri Ram or Sri Ram Millennium. The quality of saying namaste. Namaste may just seem like a simple gesture, but it goes deeper than that. It is a gesture that connects us with our spiritual self and spiritual history. The word comes from Sanskrit. Namaha means to bow, and te to you. I bow to you, literal meaning. But in a spiritual sense, it goes deeper. I bow to the divine within you. The idea is that I am accepting and I am, greeting the spirit, your spirit or your deeper self, and I'm acknowledging that. I believe that is one of the qualities that differs, and that is one of the qualities that should be practiced around all schools.
Thank you. Thanks for that answer, Kabir. As a follow-up question, it's mostly people who are over 50 years or 60 years old who are deciding the policies, even the policy on whether we should do spiritual education or not, all for children, decided by adults who were children maybe 4 decades or 5 decades if ago. So from a child's perspective, now that you are acknowledging that, look, there is a genuine problem because we are celebrating tangible metrics, marks, etc. How do you celebrate happiness? How do you celebrate, like, Dr. Vibha said, she tells her children, जो कुछ नहीं करते कमाल करते हैं. Do you think there's a time when school can get somebody on the stage, a child who failed in all grades, and say, look, he's the child, let's give him an award? Do you think that's possible? And how do you view this from the lens of a student and not an adult? If you were to solve this problem, how would you go about it?
Now, obviously, what ma'am said, that is a line from a movie. So, that shouldn't be taken very seriously. But the reality is, if there is a student who is failing in all the subjects and, is not getting any sort of mark, that means that there is something that he is doing better or she is doing better, be it in sports, be it in arts. There is something extraordinary about that child, because why else would you not put any of your efforts into something? As students, as children, and as adolescents, we have a lot of energy and we do need to put it somewhere. So if somebody is getting good marks, that means they're putting it into their studies. If somebody is a good footballer, they're putting it into their athletics. And if somebody is a good artist, they're putting it into their creativities. And that's why I believe that if a student is to be celebrated, they should be celebrated for what they're good at, not for the bad marks.
Biba, I'll come to you. Now, India is not one country. Bharat is not one country. There are some wise men once told me that 40% of Indian population is economically invisible. This we were talking from a consumption perspective, not from an education perspective, but you'll get the point. Is invisible. The other 40% only exists to serve the cream 20%. Now, when all these discussions happen, typically they happen for schools or children who are part of the SECA category. Parents are earning well, their life is well sorted, and therefore they have the luxury of talking about spirituality and dhyan and meditation and all of that. You yourself head a school which it caters to a certain socioeconomic class, okay, which is, I would say, simple word, affluent class. So do you think spirituality is a luxury that the affluent India is now discovering? Because the crores of children, 80% of kids who study in other schools, they are simply concerned about, can I get a job and feed my family?
I agree with all you say, but I would like to differ a little here and say that spirituality is a choice. If you're talking about very affluent people, they may have a yoga teacher coming. They may have somebody coming to them who's teaching them and they're flaunting about it. They're putting it on the Facebook and they're showing that we're doing it. Are they really spiritual? Is my answer that I seek from you. Spirituality comes from the values that we have within. It is our upbringing. It is how we are raised. It is what we have within ourselves, what we want to give to the society. So there is something which is called the social media post, and there is something which is called the reality. So I think that that's not reality.
So you feel that spirituality is equally should be made available. It
It is
doesn't
there
matter
for
what
you.
economic background you come
Yes,
from.
obviously.
Yeah.
This is something very basic for each one of us to survive. And there are people who may be able to show it off much better. So hence we feel that that 20% is the cream which is kind of showing it off. They're doing it. But there are others who may be practicing. Like just saying what ma'am just said, chanting. It's something everybody can do. I may not be able to show it off. So that's the difference that I feel.
That's absolutely extremely vital. Raghav, as somebody who's developing the new IKS framework Basically, you're trying to create some things that were probably lost thousands of years back, and you're bringing it back into the system. Now, what are the struggles that you face? Because when you go to schools or go to educational institute, I think you work a lot with higher education, I believe. And when you bring some of these concepts about Vivek, about Vairagya, about Indian scriptures, what kind of pushback do you see, even from people who fundamentally come from that faith or come from that process? And why do you think that that pushback comes, and how have you navigated that?
Yeah, I think we've seen a cross section of those challenges even in the questions that were asked before this. Fundamentally, we'll have to recognize the structure that we are a part of. Globalization, as S.N. Balgangadhar has told us eons ago, is not just a process of capital and labor export. It also exports tastes, preferences, languages, aspirations. So when we're trying to introduce something like IKS, and this is not something that we're recreating, those have been held by traditions. Those traditions have held it at great risk. We are only learning from them and trying to be a medium and trying to surrender ourselves to that. This surrender attitude is a little difficult because there is a metaphysical void. And that is why I said you need to look at this at a culture level in the sense of what are the habits that are getting sanctioned, what attitudes are getting punished, and what attitudes are getting encouraged. But there's also civilizational superstructure that we seem to be missing in these conversations because, let's be honest, we are calling it spirituality because religion is a bad word. But Radhakrishnan said this very beautifully right at the time of independence. In the Indian context, the magic of metaphysics was infused into the society, the multitude of society. That's what he said. For us, religion is not a category. For us, dharma is a category. Because we've lost it, we are trying to find and grope for words around it. And because you don't have dharma as the central focus, you don't have the superset of the beliefs and the convictions that give you validity for your actions, that give you a normative order. Which means that why are we struggling with this? All of the questions that we discussed right now is a function of belief in one life metaphysic. We believe that it is a material world. We believe that it is a material knowledge system. We only live once, and therefore our relationship with time has been hijacked. And if your relationship with time has been hijacked because you don't have any other way of validating your decisions, you want to claim it all in one life, which means that you are by design experiencing the fear of missing out. This fear of missing out because you have only living once sort of paradigm. Now, unless you establish the vocabulary, which is dharma, papa, punya, karma, unless you start understanding what these mean and what actions they derive, that is when the challenges that we are talking about will be sort of handled. Specifically, what challenges we have, I think there are philosophical challenges, there are structural challenges, and there are, of course, knowledge challenges. Structural challenges is because we've inherited an education structure which has looked at content in silos. Whereas the Indian integral knowledge system is something that looks at this holistically. All of us understand this, I won't belabor that point, but you're trying to fit an ocean into the bottle. You're trying to make the person via a siloed approach that will not work. Secondly, you will have structural challenges because the capacity building that is required for teachers to be familiar with this. We have to be respectful to that. It's not easy for somebody who is already having an administrative load to suddenly embrace a new paradigm. We all understand this. It's not going to be easy. That is why most of the work has to be really in building assets and supplying people with tools that they can actually use. Thirdly, of course, the philosophical challenge that I said, you need leadership. There is no substitute for leadership and executive commitment in this. If you have a few leaders who understand the vitality of this, if you have the leadership which then establishes that intent through the nerves of the organization, then this is easy. It's not a content problem, it's not a curriculum problem, it is sometimes a presentation problem, but it is fundamentally a leadership problem.
So, I think we need more than a panel discussion to understand your profound thoughts, and we'll probably, have that occasion later. But Raghav, one follow-up question I wanted to ask you. You said fundamentally about leadership, and in this country, as in many others, we look up to the government for leadership, especially because schools and education is a regulated subject. It's not a free-for-all. What more do you think the government could have done, and what opportunities do you think we've missed?
No, I think firstly, I am grateful I'm able to hear, and speak about these things only because there is a government that has given IKS as a paradigm. So I think that political air cover is super important. We are able to cohere under that umbrella called IKS. And IKS for me is not just an academic kind of paradigm. It is a paradigm that allows me to signal a certain value. It allows me to tell you that I value civilizational knowledge, which means that you and I can discover some common element and we come together. That can happen in business, that can happen in state, that can happen in academia, that can happen in technology. Because IKS is this supra paradigm that's bringing all of these things together, we are able to have this conversation. So that part they've done well. I think the 5% curriculum, it's not an intrepid foot forward. I wouldn't say it's the emphatic call, but it is something that allows us to work together and build things. But the opportunity, I think, and this is, it's easy to say, difficult to accomplish. A lot of this goes back to language. Unless we are able to figure out how to bring our Indian languages into education, we will have this process of learning and then unlearning, and that's a difficult process. Because cognitively, it's very, very difficult for us to reorient ourselves and reorient the entire neural synapse that was spoken about. Because language is what supplies that. When I say dharma, when I say karma, when I say punya, when I say papa, that's a very different mental fabric to what we say as spirituality, as values, as ethics. Ethics was never separate. Ethics, dharma, dharyate iti dharma, is that which does not sustain, is not ethical in the first place, right? So for us, the challenge is, I would say, I would have preferred if there was a bigger thrust on the primary education and the importance of Indian languages. They're doing this in higher education, I know. There is a Bharatiya Bhasha Samiti, which is now translating all of technology, vocabulary, and subjects into Indian languages. It will take a couple of generations. This is not a 100-meter sprint. This is a marathon. It requires all of us to run that marathon.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I think we may have time for one or two questions from the audience.
Amongst all of us as adults, we are saying we have to teach children, we have to teach in schools, we have to do this to them. If we flip it completely, we have to help them discover themselves. That is what our tradition is. The purity of consciousness lies within. And that's the absolute. I'm a psychiatrist. I have done the modern bits. I'm flipping it and saying, modern psychiatry says, you don't go inwards, you fight the inwards. But Indian says, inside is where there is purity. Go inwards. And I think my question really is, we keep saying spirituality. It's a very big word. It means very different things to everyone, as is obvious. Can we not say spirituality and make it simpler, even simpler, like Apurva said, for the children in the being of it, and not necessarily put it into a ring-fenced name or noun? But this is a verb. This is what Raghava said, this is life. That's all.
Quick comment on that. Sanskrit, I'm told, does not have a word to have. Sanskrit, you can only say to be, right? Which is why, again, language and cognition are so important in this.
Can I just take 1 second to respond to that? Thank you, Kavita. I think I was sort of waiting if I should jump in somewhere or not, because this is actually exactly what I wanted to say. We're talking a lot about what children should do. My question is, what are we doing? How are we being? And a lot of what children are going through, whether it's anxiety over marks or where do I go to college, it's our anxiety. It's the world we have built. We are part of this problem. So why can't we start looking inward here? And I really think there are lots of young people. I have a lot of friends, I'm calling myself young, who have done this, and their children are beautiful. Their children are beautiful. They have worked on themselves. They have chosen to live differently. And the question I think we have to ask is, what are we doing right now? Because that's what children are receiving. It's flowing automatically.
Okay, one last question.
थैंक यू, धन्यवाद सबका. मेरा सवाल यह है कि बच्चे की ज़िंदगी को अगर ट्रांसफॉर्म करना है तो उसके पूरे इन्वायरमेंट को ट्रांसफॉर्म करना पड़ेगा, और उसमें सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट पहलू होता है पेरेंट. हम पेरेंट तक आध्यात्म कैसे पहुंचाएं, कैसे उनको ट्रांसफॉर्म करें? वी हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट टीचर ट्रेनिंग, वी हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट फैसिलिटेटर, सेल्फ एंड ऑल द, बट पेरेंट को कैसे, उसके घर को कैसे ट्रांसफॉर्म करें? जब तक वो नहीं होगा तब तक बच्चे पे फुल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन नहीं हो पाएगा.
I think parents also have to become a part of this movement. It's very important from this level, when we are doing these such kind of sessions and deliberations, we need to involve parents, and they should also become a part of this movement to understand the commotion is created by lot at home by the parents. The children are innocent, and it's more easy to work with children. But at the same time, parents also need to participate in these dialogues, I think. So we need to have, like you have a student, we must have some parents here to talk about what are their issues. Yeah.
So I'll just add here that first thing, who am I? I need to identify that. Now, once I've identified this, so whatever change I have to see, I have to start with that change within myself. If I tell my family to do it, they may not do it. First, it has to be engraved within my own self, and then it gets transferred. So this is a journey which is for each one of us, and it eventually, goes round.
I'll quickly add one thing. There is so much of judgment in our dialogue. The children are beautiful, they are not beautiful, this is right, this is not right, spirituality, morality, ethics. How about acceptance? I think that's also a very profound part of spirituality. How about accepting each other? We're all exposed to different ethos, different environments, different experiences. Pehle accept kar lete hain. And let's get exposed to whatever is available to us. We imbibe it, it works. Wonderful. Different things work for different people. I think we need to just shed light on that also. Thanks.
About the time.
Just 1 minute. I think we
seconds.
look at this as five-stakeholder alignment. Firstly, you need the policy and the political leadership. We have to understand that they play the most toughest and the most important role. Then you need the academic leadership, leaders in institutions who are able to take this conviction and embed it. Third, you need the parents. Definitely, you need that to be part of the ecosystem. Fourth, you need industry. You need the upstream linkages because you need people to say that I value somebody with these values, right? And then, of course, all of this has to be centered around the child. So we need a cohesive partnership with five stakeholders: the political leaders, the public leaders, the academic leaders, the parents, the teachers, and the learner.
Thank you so much for a wonderful panel. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.